Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting, and welcome to the second session of our Mi'kmaw Speaker Series here at Acadia University. My name is Sabrina Whitman, and I'm the Coordinator of Indigenous Affairs at the university. Today's session is about powwow protocol and regalia, and I'm really excited for everyone to actually be able to engage with the speakers that we have today. We have Michael R. Denny and Garrett Gloade, as well as Jennifer Denny, who will be speaking. What I'll do is I'll introduce each speaker, and they'll speak for about 20 or 30 minutes on their specific theme of this topic, and then allow for 10 minutes of questions for that specific speaker, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. So if you'd like, you can put your questions in the Q&A box, and we have a moderator watching that, and we'll keep an eye on what your questions are. I just want to say thank you as well before we start this event to Community Culture Heritage at the province of Nova Scotia, because they're the ones who funded this event and made it possible, so we're able to provide funds to our speakers, which is really important. This whole series is about in recognizing Indigenous culture and Indigenous knowledge and valuing our knowledge systems as equal to Western knowledge systems. So if you were in yesterday's session, you would have learned all about Nudumalik and Two-Eyed Seeing. And this is really important. So for these speaking events, it's also important that we recognize and honor these speakers for their time. And that's one of the challenges we have in post-secondary spaces, actually, is that our knowledge systems aren't viewed as valid as Western knowledge systems. So people who have the expertise equal to PhDs or even greater than that aren't always recognized and given space in post-secondary institutions. And this speaker series is highlighting that challenge and really supporting who our leaders are in different areas. So on that note, I'm going to hand the floor over to Michael R. Denny. He is a Mi'kmaw singer and dancer. He's been involved in countless powwows. He's one of the key people you go to for trying to coordinate a powwow. He is a proud Mi'kmaw speaker. He's from Eskasoni, and he's also the coordinator of the Red Road Project at MK. So honored to have Michael R. here today, and I will give it over to him now.
Oh, wala Sabrina. That's gisko bibane moksi gishkaji skudaman unwell Mi'kmawel Mauyomil Pugokul Nedical Gasmela Mugul Mauyomil Mikchichawagik Tetelel na Mi'kmawel Mauyomil Gishkaji Bilawegel Jamua Seg na Gishkajis means kudu skudum, takoy danin gejidum na takoy ni nenum, takoy ni na egna muksia wishkuak, edaway we'll jukes doing now. Thank you everybody for thank you Sabrina for allowing me to be here and allowing me to speak. My name is Michael R. Denny. I am Mi'kmaw from the Eskasoni First Nation in Cape Breton Island, Unama'ki, and I've been doing powwows since before 1992. So pretty much almost all my life. My father was one of the key people in Eskasoni who started the powwow here in Cape Breton. Eskasoni is one of the, I guess Eskasoni was one of the powwows, is one of the longest running powwows in Nova Scotia and all of the Atlantic. So we take pride in that, and we take pride in my family connection within the first start of the powwows here in the Atlantic region, but also in my community of Eskasoni. I'd like to talk a little bit about, what makes Mi'kmaw powwows unique. We talk about cultural protocols, powwow protocols, but also we recognize what is Mi'kmaw, what is pan-Indigenous, and what makes, I guess, a mishmash and blend in what makes a Mi'kmaw powwow. So I'm going to step back a little bit and give people a little bit of a history to powwows in our territory. The first powwow. So let me say, even before the first powwow. So powwows are a social gathering. There are can be a ceremonial gathering, especially with one's personal spirituality. There's no doubt about that. And there's really, um, it really does connect to people's spirituality, but also it's a huge social event. Powwows today, a modern powwow, it's all across North America. No matter where you go across North America, there's these same style of songs, same style of dancing, and many different styles. Depending on the nation that you go to, they may do things a little different. So I'm hoping to get a little into that. We recognize today that the powwow is something Mi'kmaw people have adopted into our culture. It is 100% a part of our culture, but it is not traditionally Mi'kmaw. It's something that we borrowed from the West, mainly from the Sioux people. When the powwows first started in this area, a lot of those teachings, a lot of those people from that area came here and taught us here how we were going to do powwow. We brought people in from out west to teach us how to properly do a powwow, how to properly do these ways. And that was one of the things that we did when I was a young kid running around the powwow grounds. That was a safe place for us. Our parents dropped us off, and my dad was running the powwow in Eskasoni. They dropped us off, and we had no parental supervision. So um, so powwows originally, come from the West. So I call it today pan-Indigenous. And pan-Indigenous, there's some pros and cons about that. I like to focus on the pros of it, because we incorporate what it is in our culture, Mi'kmaw culture, to make it a unique Mi'kmaw powwow. So powwows are kind of I kind of put them into three categories. First is the traditional powwow. Traditional powwow is more community run, more grassroots. There's no competition, and usually, it revolves around the community celebrating and a celebration of life. So that's kind of what the traditional powwow is. And then we get into what I call, I call it just a Maui Omi. And a Maui Omi, to me, is more of a organic gathering, more so than the traditional, I guess, the traditional sense, where there's less structure. There isn't really, it's more of a social than anything. And sometimes you see those popping up across Mi'kmaq. And then the last one, the third category of powwow, is the competition or contest powwow. And contest powwow out here is relatively new. I think, off top of my head, the first competition powwow here took place in Halifax, the Member 2 400 gathering. I do believe that was the first competition powwow that took place here in our territory. It has been since, there was a couple powwows in Halifax since then that were competition. Eskasoni right now is the longest running competition powwow. Millbrook has a competition powwow, and then now we have the Maui Dodgy gathering in Dartmouth. So there's some, it's quite a modern powwow. Competition dancing, competition singing, and there's prize money involved. So that's quite popular out west. Less popular out here, but it's still one of the. I'd like to recognize that as well. So when you go to a powwow, there's key people and key organizers and key individuals that help run the powwow and to keep it going. The first traditional powwow, or like we see today, like the modern powwow we see today, took place in 1986, right under the McKay Bridge in Halifax, in the park there. I think it's the Africville Park there, and that was the first powwow that took place in our territory with the big powwow drum, powwow dancers. It had a big, the Denny family in Eskasoni had a big part in helping organize that and helping that to be, incorporate a lot of our Mi'kmaw teachings, and George Paul and those people, those pioneers. So when you go to a community powwow, powwows are open for everybody. They are public events. They're quite different from ceremonies, where sometimes ceremonies may be a private event or invite only. Powwows are generally a open event for everybody, native, non-native, it doesn't matter. So it's a community social event. Many different people from all over, we call Indian country or Turtle Island, come over, and you invite special guests to come over to, either to sing. You might invite a drum group from somewhere else to come and share their songs. You might invite dancers to come in and share their particular dancing styles. Champion dancers, we call them. Usually ones who have placed, big contest powwows are recognized champion dancers. Same with the drum groups, champion drum groups. And there's, we have what we call an MC, a Nuji Gelosid, or is how you'd say that Mi'kmaw, the one who speaks. So the one who, they're the ones who kind of play the role, I call it the voice of the powwow. They're the ones who bring in their teachings and their stories, and there's a lot of humor, and there's a lot of, the MC has to be able to talk, and you have to be able, to be a good MC, you got to be able to entertain, but also to ensure that those teachings, those cultural teachings, are being passed on even in the public context like that. So they play one of the most important roles in organizing a powwow, the powwow event itself. The next person that is the arena director. The arena director is the boss. I like to say the boss, where if there's any special ceremonies or if there's anything that needs to be done, they're the ones who make sure that that stuff happens according to protocol, according to the teachings that are local to that territory, the teachings that they bring, and they're quite important. They're the ones who are the most busy, in my opinion, and they bring their teachings in. They ensure that the drums are well taken care of. They ensure that the dance is taken care of, the dancers are taken care of. They ensure that that arena, that dance area is safe, it's clean, it's there's nobody running across, there's no kids playing around out there. That area there is very important and very sacred. So that arena director is a key individual in this powwows. Sometimes they call him a whip man. Most powwows, it originates from like the Sioux and the Sundance style. The Sundance has a whip man, and traditionally, sometimes they would walk around with a stick, or they was a stick man. Sometimes they also call them too. They walk around with a stick. The stick was to kind of ensure, if there's a kid running by, you give him a little whack. But more in the sense of the way, it's medicine. It's more that they don't really hit them, but it's more of I guess the ceremony behind it. So sometimes you see those arena directors, they have a stick, and they carry that stick. It's more the representation of what it used to do and what it used to be. So that the arena director plays a huge role. The next, I like to honor, those people that we bring in. A lot of times we have host drums. Now, host drum is a drum group that might not necessarily be from the community, but they can also be from the community. There could be people from out west or wherever. That host drum is those recognized drum groups that know all the songs, know proper protocol around their drum. They hold themselves up higher. Um, they ensure that, you know, when people see them, that they're, you know, the culture and the protocol that they follow around the drum, because that drum also has a separate protocol on their own. That lead singer is in charge of that drum, is in charge of their singers, in charge of their songs, and you know, it's a partnership between everything. So that drum, when you invite a host drum, you're gonna be sure that that drum is a well-respected drum, that you know who they are, you know their lead singer, you know what their lead singer is about. Um, when we call, you know, a lead singer, sometimes you call them a drum keeper. They're governed by a separate set of protocols. When I was a young man, we fasted for our drum, and the old way, as I call it. Today, people don't do that anymore. People just go and they buy a drum. And you know, when I was a young guy, I'm still a young man, but when I was a teenager, um, we went out and we fasted, we sweat, and we were given a drum by one of our elders, Mike Doucette. You know, he's my first cousin, and so we started our drum group, Stony Bear Singers, and that's how we started our drum. And that's how, you know, it wasn't easy, and it still isn't easy to keep everybody together, to follow those protocols, and to ensure that, you know, to ensure that our drum is well respected, and with our singers. So the host drum is quite important, especially to a powwow. Then you bring in those head dancers. Those head dancers are those ones who come in, who are champion dancers, who are recognized for their dance, who are the best of the best, to come in and to, you know, they share their dance styles. Each dancer has their own unique steps, their own moves, and they're recognized for their outfit, for their regalia, for their dance moves. But also, they're respected on the powwow trail. People know who they are, and you know, it all comes down to they hold themselves with a certain degree of honor, and they ensure that they are role models for those, you know, for those people. I'm going to leave it at that, because I think Jen is going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to leave that as it is. And then you have a lot of these people, our dancers who are in the areas. We like to honor veterans. Those veterans, who are quite important in our Maui Omi, because without them we wouldn't be celebrating. Um, One of the teachings I was given, you know, especially about the powwow culture, is that, you know, when you're at a powwow and our grand entry, you know, you always have that person in front. That person in front is usually your head veteran, and he's carrying, or he or she is carrying, that eagle staff. Traditionally, it was only men, um, but I said we're in a world where women are soldiers, and Samaganas too. So I make sure we honor those women who have put themselves, again, between us and the enemy, to keep us safe. So whether the head veteran is a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. They're the ones who are in front, who carry that eagle staff, and that eagle staff. They're the only ones who really have earned that right to carry that eagle staff, and to be in front of all the grand entry. And those flag bearers, those flag carriers that come behind them, are also veterans. They have earned that right to carry that flag, because they have gone off to war. So they're the ones who hold those positions. They're the ones who go first, the soldiers, in order for everything going into that dancing area. When you go into a powwow, that grand entry, they're the ones who ensure that the soldiers ensure that everything is safe. All the dancers that are behind them are going to be safe. So behind them, usually they'll have the head dancers, or actually, um, your invited guests, your royalty, your um, politicians, your chiefs, or whatever. Um, that's how we kind of do things out our way. And then after that, you have your head dancers. And then after your head dancers, depending where you go, they would always get the elders. More contest powwows do it like this. They do everything by category, going by the oldest, and then all the way through each category. But out here in Mi'kmaw, how we do things here is we get the men's traditional dancers. They go in first. They represent those warriors. The reason why they go first is to ensure that the powwow area or the dancing area is safe for the women and children behind to come in after them. So you get all these dancing categories uh, originated from warrior societies. They go in first to ensure that the arena is safe for all the women and all the children to come in after. So after all that, they're going in. The women come in. It goes men's traditional, men's grass, chicken, fancy, and uh, then it goes to the women's traditional, women's jingle, women's fancy. Out here in our territory, we have a very unique dance. We call it the Gojua. And that's what makes it really unique about our powwows out here, because there's nowhere else that you can go to that you can see this dance, because it's a traditional Mi'kmaw dance. And that's why our powwows are unique. You don't just see the pan-indigenization of indigenous culture with powwow culture. You also see what Mi'kmaq also has to offer in our traditional songs and our traditional dances, which is very, very important. I think every Mi'kmaq person should know those songs, and they should know that dance, because that's what makes us unique. You put somebody in a men's traditional regalia from Mi'kmaq, and you put a men's traditional regalia, somebody from Alberta. You can't tell the difference. They dance the same, they sound the same, whatever. But Mi'kmaq people, we have our own traditional dance, and I want to make sure that people still sing those songs and people still practice that dance. Um, and that's a part of my own, I guess, my goal in my life is to not only incorporate that, but to bring that back and to make it as popular as we possibly can. Whether that's through incorporating that when I MC powwows, it's usually a deal. I just throw it and I sing anyways. But um, we have our big contest powwows out here. Those Gojua dancers come out, they dance for contest dance. It's an incentive. So that's one of the reasons why, or one of the things that the Mi'kmaq people are quite unique. We get into different things across the powwows. You go to powwows here, there's what we call a feast, eh? A feast. Wigabaltimk. And a feast is important because everything that we do as Mi'kmaq people revolves around food. That word Mawiomi, it literally means Maui is to gather around or get together. Omi is grease or fat. So you're gathering around that grease. So it has to do with food. When our traditionally we'd get together at a Mawiomi, there would be a fire with your piece of a big piece of moose roast or a caribou or a deer. Caribou were traditionally here. Deer something came around here later, but caribou. And they would capture the grease and the fat that's dripping down. They'd capture it, and with our traditional bread, luskinigan, they would dip their luskinigan in that. And that was a delicacy, so you didn't often get that. So that's why they call it the Mawiomi. So a true Mawiomi has to do with a feast and has to do with food. It's more than just a gathering, as some people say. A gathering is a Mawiomi. Our language is so in depth and detail. If a true Mi'kmaq word, you can break the word down and find a root word to exactly figure out what it means. So a Mawiomi is what we call a powwow. So kind of going through the feast, that's something very unique about Mi'kmaq powwows. I've traveled all across Indian country, attending powwows since I was a little boy, right up until last year, since all powwows were canceled here. Traveled all across Indian country, attending powwows and stuff. One thing I really, really noticed, and I realized what makes us so unique is the feast. We invite everybody to come and eat with us at our powwows here. Eskasoni has a contest powwow, but we still feed everybody who comes in. And usually that's when everybody comes down from the community. There's free food and everybody comes down. And it's an opportunity not only to get a free meal, there's an opportunity to, get some Mi'kmaq delicacies, some traditional food, moose, deer, luskinigan, eels, salmon, blamu, gadak, lentog, diamoy, all sorts of different foods that we traditionally have. So that's what really I think defines what a Mi'kmaw powwow is, to incorporate our Gojua, to incorporate the community, and also our to get together, our feast and the Mawiomi. That feast is all involved in that. Um, Usually, some powwows they'll even offer you tea. That's one of the things about Mi'kmaw people is you don't go to anybody's house and you don't get offered tea. That's just a common courtesy. So that's kind of a generalization of Mi'kmaw powwows. Then we have to get into what the actual gathering itself. We call it powwow etiquette, and powwow etiquette is quite important. And people, powwow etiquette more so for the audience, the crowd. Again, it's a public event, but there's some protocol, some rules, some etiquette that we all follow, to be respectful of the gathering, of that spirit, and of that sacredness that's there in that gathering area. So some powwows we have an arbor. An arbor in the middle is a big wooden structure. All the drum groups are usually under that arbor. And around that arbor is the arena or the dancing area. And that's where all the dancers are dancing. And that area is kind of, unless you've been invited into that circle by the MC who says, come on in, usually during the intertribals, you normally don't go into that area, and you definitely don't walk across to the other side. So, we ask people to, go around just so that you don't cut any dancers off, you don't bump into any dancers. That's more to respect those, the dancer space and the drum group space. Some powwows don't have an arbor. They have just a big open dancing area, and the drums are off to the side. And it goes to the same thing. People can come around the drum and listen to the drum, record their songs, or listen to the drum, and once there's shake their hands or whatever. That's okay usually. You take direction from the MC. The MC is kind of the one who's going to be, reminding people of some powwow etiquette during the Mawiomi, during the powwow. There's different things. Maybe there's an honor song where, we switch from a social to more of a ceremonial thing, and we want to ensure that the protocol is followed when it comes to honor songs or memorial songs or songs that are important, dances that are important. So you just want to make sure that the MC is going to be talking, or she's going to be talking about many different things, and you want to ensure that the etiquette is followed. So the MC normally would be announcing those things. Dogs are not usually allowed. Couple teachings behind that is, as we know that Sundan or powwows originate from the Sioux, which kind of adopted it from like the Sundance. And at the Sundance, the dog is a sacred animal, and we believe that the dog can bring healing. So at the Sundance, they normally they make puppy soup, or they cook a purebred dog and make it into a soup because of its healing. It can heal us because we watch the dog can heal itself. So we eat that. So when you're at the powwow, you want to make sure there's no dogs around. Is that the spiritual realm that we don't see. When there's a dog around, we don't want that to be mixed up. So that's why you don't have dogs around. So normally, when I, and especially when I'm an arena director, I try not to bring those. If I see somebody with a dog, I ask them like, hey, can you take the dog somewhere else? Make sure, or especially don't bring that dog into the arena. Even if it's a service dog, we still try to discourage people bringing in that. It's part of that big protocol. Respect is huge. Respect is huge. You don't go and bump into people's outfits. People have these eagle feathers that they may have earned them, and you're bumping into their eagle feathers. You may be damaging them. something that's so important to them. You don't go and you don't touch people, especially dancers. You don't go and you don't touch the dancers. Their outfit is theirs and it's sacred to them. And you got to make sure, or it is sacred, and you have to ensure that those important part of their outfits are followed, that you don't touch them. And the same thing goes with the drums. You don't go and you don't touch the drum. That some drums are closed. We call it, there's some drums or groups that are closed drums that don't allow drum hoppers. Drum hoppers are people that want to sing from another drum group. Some drum groups don't allow that, and it's proper protocol actually to ask the lead singer if you're going to sit down and sing, and that's actually being forgotten quite a bit out here. And I try to enforce that, because that's the old way, and it used to be done like that. You don't go and you sit at anybody's drum without asking to sit and sing first. So that a part of it. You don't go and you don't touch the drum. That drum is sacred, and you don't know. We all carry energy. Sometimes we don't know what you're putting onto that drum. We call it medicine. You don't know what kind of medicine you're carrying. So we want to make sure that to be safe for those that drum group, their songs. And you don't know, like I said, like my drum, we earned our drum through a ceremony. We didn't just go out and buy a drum because we wanted to. We made a commitment, and I made that commitment to my drum, to follow those drum protocols. And one of those protocols, to stay sober, no drinking, no drugs, and I follow that life to a T, because I've never drank, I've never done drugs ever in my life, because I made that commitment to that drum, and that drum is, to me, is my whole life. So the etiquette, again, going back to sometimes you have to listen to the MC. Everybody wants to take pictures, and that's so, everybody wants to take pictures. We're in a world of social media where you're taking selfies and you're taking, you're going on Snapchat and you're going all, Instagram or Facebook. We want to, it's good to share, but it's good etiquette to ask, if you want to take a picture with a dancer, it's good to ask them. It's really good to ask them, just to say, hey, can I take your picture, or can we take a picture together? You let them know that what your intentions are. Many times, photographers have come to our powwows and have taken pictures of our dancers, of our drum groups, of our elders, and of the community without asking permission. And then next summer you see these postcards walking around. So many times that has happened. Our people have been exploited by those those photographers who they didn't know, and their innocence, maybe it's their ignorance, but it's just common courtesy to go and ask, and ask those dancers, hey, can I take your picture? I just want to post it on social media. I think you're an awesome dancer. I think your regalia is beautiful. So that's kind of the etiquette of there's a lot more. There's a lot more, and I can talk for hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here for now and let our moderators here to take over. But bazagudle wala yo tandel jigsuyo kiji bugok ko school de manek we will no omsit munamul no na schedule no remudio. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I honor you guys. I honor you guys, everybody. Even though I can't see you, I know everybody's there. And I know I can talk for a long time. I sometimes can get long-winded, eh? So I guess again, on behalf of myself, my family, my wife, and my child, and my mother, and my drum group, thank you very much. That's all I can speak on behalf of. So again, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I guess we can open it up for questions. I'll give it to Sabrina, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you, Michael R. And don't worry, anyone who works at Acadia, I say to them, I'm long-winded, and it's a Mi'kmaw stereotype that's very true. And I said, I'm not even as long-winded as most Mi'kmaw can be. So everybody from Acadia is really witnessing that we all have the gift of gab as Mi'kmaw. We have a few questions, but before we go into the questions, would you be willing to sing the Gojoa so people know what it sounds like?
Oh yeah. I don't have a jigmagan on me,
Wondering.
but that's fine. That's fine. You know what? I looked at it this morning and I said, I don't need it. I'm okay. But Gojwa songs are short social songs. They're traditionally a competition song, competition dance, really. And very quickly, a little history about it. Chapel Island are in Botlodek. Our people have been gathering there. I don't want to say forever. I really don't know, but at least last 300 years or so. And at the Miniguk, on the island, there's actually a circle indented into the ground where they would dance. So you can tell they've been dancing in the same spot for hundreds of years. So um, during the St. Anne's mission, people would get together from different communities, and they would send their best dancer from their community. So they had people from Eskasoni, Bodlodek, Wego, Ahmed Cook, Member to Baknkik, people from all over, Ulsibuktuk and Victor Landing or Truro or Shubi. People from all over would come there, and they'd send their best dancer. And the singer would say, our Gedumwet is the word for to sing almost. So Gedumwet, so that the person would say Gedumuksinan. So the guy would go up there and they would sing a song. And when the singer would sing his song, the crowd kind of was the judge. So everybody can tell who the best dancer was. And there was no money, there was nothing involved. It was bragging rights, right? So I'll sing a short song. Gena, 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 nachugalo, kekama wachugalo, hyena, 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 hena, nachugalo, kek, hama wachugalo, kek, hama wachugalo, kek, hama wachugalo, hyena, 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 hyena. Hena Najwalogig, Hama Wajwalogig, Hama Wajwalogig, Hama Daho. And we say Daho at the end of our songs. That's the only time we're actually supposed to use the word Daho at the end of a song. But that's one of the songs that are, we call a traditional Mi'kmaw song. Don't sound anything like powwow music. There's other songs like uh, Henna go do we go do, henna go do we go do, henna go do we get do, henna go do we go do, henna go do we get do, henna go do we go do, henna go do we get do, henna go do we get do, henna go do we go do, henna go do we get do. And I go do we go do, and I go do we get do, and I go do we get do. Oh.
Thank you, Michael R. Yesterday we had Trevor Gould on, and he was talking about two-eyed seeing, but we know that he's a champion Gojoa dancer. So if only we had
champion.
We could have had the video on him dancing the Gojoa, but I'm not getting up and putting the camera on me dancing it, just so for all of those people tuning in. But it is a different dance as well, and maybe we can put a link at some point to someone doing the dance so people understand how it is very unique to Mi'kma'ki. Some of the questions we have, though, the first one asks is, can women serve as arena directors and MCs?
Yes, yep, they can. More, what I've been seeing more recently, there has been a movement. A couple years ago in Eskasoni, I wanted to bring those, bring that balance into our power. We hired a female MC. Some people might know Tanya Jo Hall. She came and MC'd the Eskasoni Powwow years ago. We had Amanda LaRock, who is an accomplished champion dancer. She was our head judge. So there, I worked with Amanda Fox couple, I think last year at the Maui Dodge Pow, who was arena director. So there has been a big change and a balance in that arena, so that generally it was male dominated, and I want to be very inclusive of of our own the women to take those leadership roles in that power that power circuit, that power circle, and I want them to take that role. So as much in my power, whenever I have the opportunity to bring people in, to hire different people to do different roles, I try to do that as best as I can to incorporate the women. And to be honest, there's really nothing, that there's no teachings that says that a woman can't be an MC, or a woman can't be a head judge. So I think that's there should be no problem with that, and we do see it time to time.
Thank you, Michael R. We have one question that I'm just going to skip over. It's about dance and regalia, so I'm going to leave that for when Jen speaks. But we have one speaking about being a head dancer, and I do want to acknowledge that for Acadia's first powwow, our head male dancer, Craig Isaac, is actually tuning in today and saying hello to everyone who's participating in speakers. But we have someone who asked this question. They said, how do you earn the right to be a head dancer or lead with the eagle staff or have an eagle feather? How are these rights earned?
Okay. So, an eagle staff is, I'll start off with that one because that one was quick. Usually a veteran is the one who carries that eagle staff, who has that right because they've gone off to war and has taken part of that. They've earned that right. There's too many times people are just making one because they want to be in front. And I call them out as it is. I call it out as I see it. Sometimes it's not about some people want to glorify themselves and be in front of the power. At Eskasoni, I ensure that our head veteran is the only staff carrier who have earned that right to be there. So for that one, I think a veteran. Simple as that. You can be a caretaker of an eagle staff, but you don't really bring it in. You have to make sure a veteran is the one who's taking care of that, who has taken on that responsibility, or they've earned that responsibility. A lot of times it's about what you earn, and an eagle feather is the same way. And an eagle feather, some people go out on fast, and that's what they earn at the end of their fast. 4 days they receive an eagle feather, and that's all. Something so small, but it's so important and significant, that eagle feather. Sometimes they might attach it to their outfit, their regalia, to their dance stick or something. And that's why when I talk about it, don't touch people's stuff, because you don't know how important or how significant that eagle feather could be to that individual. The sacrifice that they had to do to earn that. So for eagle feathers, sometimes that's one of the things that, sometimes you're given one, sometimes you find one. Sometimes you go to DNR and you get a whole eagle. It all depends, right? How an eagle feather comes to a person. But most, a lot of times it's you've earned it. When I get an eagle, we go and we sweat and we do a ceremony for it, because that's just that's just how we do things, or how I do things anyways. I don't remember the third part of that question.
They were asking about how you can be a head dancer.
Oh, yes. So maybe I'm going to leave that to Jen, if that's okay with Jen. I'll just see if Jen gives me a head nod. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to leave that to Jen, because I know Jen is a well-respected dancer. And I think she can talk more to that.
Perfect. So just one last question for you. It's someone asking more about procedure with having service dogs. They just want to ensure that they have appropriate information when it comes to approaching someone who has a service dog and wants to attend a powwow.
Okay. I guess, with service dogs, we try to be very inclusive and very, very, usually there's a strict policy of no dogs allowed. I worked in mental health for 10 years. I've worked with a lot of people with PTSD and trauma, and because of my work and my background, my preference is that you can still be involved in the powwow as an audience member, kind of sit back, sit back at your chair in the audience section, right, in the area. Do not bring your dog around the drums. Do not bring your dog into the dancing area. That's my only teachings I have. But if you have a service dog, if you're part of the audience, you're more than welcome to sit in the audience and take part of the powwow.
Thank you, Michael R. It was a pleasure to have you speak for us and to be a part of our Acadia family. Our next speaker we have up is Garrett Gloade, and again, he's a big member, I'd say, of our Acadia University family. He was the one who really organized our powwow on campus in 2019. Hard to believe it's been that long now. And Garrett is the senior heritage interpreter and drum keeper at the Millbrook Cultural Center. And he's going to speak to us today a little bit more around the drum and drum protocol. So I will hand it over to Garrett. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Gwe, Nindalawisi, Garrett Gloade, Delawi, Millbrook First Nation. So hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Garrett Gloade, and I come from Millbrook First Nation. If you're unsure where that's at, that's right in the dead center of Nova Scotia. It's kind of funny you brought me and Michael are on here, and both of us kind of do a little bit of the same work. Like Sabrina said, that I organize gatherings as well as Michael are. Our teachings are somewhat the same, but also very much different. He's been part of the powwow circle for quite a long time. I myself, I started singing probably around 19, 20 years old. So I'm still fairly new at this. And I guess I like to say that I'm also a lifelong learner. So discussing the drum, the teachings that I receive are a little different from Michael R's. He fasted for his drum. However, mine was just given to me. And the teachings, from what I understand, when we sit around that drum, we're all considered equal. We're no better, no different than one another. People have titles within the drum, drum keeper or lead singer. I don't put myself into any of those categories. That's just my personal preference. I'm just a singer. And when it comes to all the singers, I do believe that all the singers have that capability of being a lead singer. When we sit around that drum, we're all considered equal. When we sing in one mind, one body, one spirit. The drum itself, it could come in a variety of shapes and sizes, whether it's a hand drum or a water drum, or even a big powwow drum. The shape of it represents the circle of life. So no matter what, the drum will always carry forward. And when your time is up here on this earth, that drum will carry forward. There's one person that I really listen to, and we talk quite often. His name is Randy Wood. He's one of my teachers, and he always tells me to always honor the drum and honor who you are as a human being. Obviously we're humans and we do make mistakes and so on, but to honor that drum, honor that spirit of that drum is the one most important thing. Michael R. stated that, no drugs and no alcohol, and I highly believe that. And again, my teachings come from a different place and also more or less a new age. I myself, I don't consume alcohol and I don't do drugs as well. I have in the past. And when I have in the past, I felt guilty about it. And from that guilt, I would actually abstain away from the drum for a period of 4 days. And those are just the teachings that I was taught. And that's something that I also try to reiterate to the singers that I sing with. And really, what I try to carry forward is more or less to the youth of the community. So of my community, Millbrook. So when I tell them, like, all right, you know, if you're going to do something, that's something that they're going to do on their own time. Don't bring it to the drum. So they definitely respect that in their own way, right? It's you know, trying to think off top of my head here about everything that we need to talk about, but Michael are pretty well hit it on top of the head over and over again. Things that we can say. When we sing as singers, and when we're singing, our voices project upwards to the Creator. So when it comes to the drum therefore represents the heartbeat of Mother Earth. There's always the womanly half and manly half of all things. Mostly around the drum, you'll have men sitting around the drum. That's more or less a common practice amongst most drums across Turtle Island. There is some family drums that do have women that sit with them, but that pertains to that family, and people do respect that. But more or less, the teachings behind it was that the drum was a gift from the man to the woman. And when the woman gave that drum to the man, and that woman was White Buffalo Cav woman, that woman clearly stated, like, take this, you're a man, take this drum, help heal our people. That is the duty of help heal and protect our people. So that is the duty of the male. So when we sit around that drum, we're the ones that do the work. We beat the drum with the sticks, and we sing. But the women, they will stand behind the men, and they will sing backup. But also they would ensure that we are doing what we're meant to be doing, because that is the role of the woman. They're there to keep our men in line. And when you go to a powwow, you'll see a lot of the drums that will have backup singers, and especially out west, more or less all of them have 1 to 2 to 3, and sometimes even up to 5 backup singers singing at one time along with the men. And it's something that can be pretty powerful when you're there to experience it in person. I myself, my journey first started here with the drum in Millbrook, when I first started singing with a group known as a tribe called Mi'kmaw. And you know, it was a great opportunity for me to learn. I know as a child, in experiencing powwows for the first time, and even later on, that was the one thing that I was always drawn to, was the drum. So I can also see why the youth here in our community take to it very well, because I have that same look on that drum. And I was always shy. So growing up, there was opportunities for me to be able to sit around the drum, but I was always shy to do so. And when Millbrook first started their group as a tribe called Mi'kmaw, and I had a couple of friends of mine reach out to me and welcomed me with open arms, it was something that was very powerful, and it's really a feeling that you cannot explain, to be honest. My first powwow was when I was 20 years old, and it was in Ottawa at a competition powwow. So my very first powwow was, I had to be on beat and sing my arse off, and hoping that we would actually place. And that's actually one of the very first times I actually met Michael and the Stony Bear Singers. And definitely that was a group that I looked up to when I still today, but also when I first started singing. And when he talked about like powwows and how they're different, from going from a large competition powwow in Ottawa to a powwow here in Nova Scotia was very contrasting. But anyhow, we'll get to that in a little bit. Then from a tribe called Mi'kmaw, I then went on to Eastern Eagle, where I was able to really travel and really experience different powwows in New England, within the United States, and if it wasn't for the drum, and this is something that I reiterate to the youth within my community, is that drum is such a powerful tool that it will take us to places that we can only ever have ever dreamed of. You know, being a Mi'kmaw man or a young man here in Nova Scotia, and to travel across North America, or Turtle Island, I should say, to be able to do what you love to do is something that you can't explain, but it's something that you wish for others to enjoy and others to experience. And Eastern Eagle gave me that opportunity to really step out of my shell and really travel across Turtle Island to experience the different cultures, experience the different powwows. And the thing with me is that I'm very observant. I look and I watch and I take in as much as I possibly can from each gathering that I attend to. And I try to bring little bits back here, and especially when I'm organizing various events. And then from what I learned with those two drum groups, I then try to share with the youth of my community. And our community here has a youth drum group known as the Iron Tide Singers. We're still growing, but to be able to learn and travel with Eastern Eagle, and also with the tribe called Mi'kmaw, and learn from other groups here within Mi'kmawgi and also abroad, has definitely given me the tools to really step outside of my shell. Not only that, I was given the opportunity to sing with those two groups, but even champion groups such as, experiencing the drum, sitting around with groups such as Northern Cree and Cree Confederation have been probably the biggest highlight so far in my singing career. And yeah. Now, when it comes to the drum, it's such a humbling experience to be able to sit around that drum and be able to touch a tool so powerful, but not only that, bring healing to people who need it. So when it comes to the drum, and even singers have their own reasons why they sing. Some do it for mental health. That's actually probably one of the biggest reasons why a singer does sing. You know, some singers are song makers, and sometimes when they're not in the best state of mind, or even in the greatest state of mind, they're the songs that come out reflect that personality, and some of them could be very powerful. And seeing how things come together is really rewarding. There's a lot of great song makers who I very much look up to, some of them who are even younger than me here, that live here in my own community. Knowing what they go through daily, and to hear something that comes out so beautiful is they should really look at that beauty that really comes out. And I know it's hard to say, but that it's just great. I do apologize. I'm trying to think of things that come on, put on top of my head here, and when it comes to everything, Michael, I pretty well covered the whole the grand scheme of the whole gathering. Also, singers do it for financial assistance. Some singers don't come from rich families or what have you, and they do go to powwow. They travel from gathering to gathering, and it helps them financially to make it from one powwow to the next. It feeds them, it feeds their families, and so on. I myself, I sing because I simply love it. Ever since the first time that I've hit the drum, it was something that resonated with me within my heart, and to even put it into words, it's a feeling that, you know, I really cannot describe, and that is what I want to share with the youth of my community, is to really bring those experiences to them. And hopefully once I'm done, or when I'm finished doing what I have to do here in the community, that they're able to go out, they're able to travel, they're able to experience the things that I was able to experience just because of the drum alone. Any more there, Sabrina? Sorry.
Yeah, we have questions actually for you. I do want to first say, like, he's talking about all of the work that he's done with youth in his community, and I really have to highlight the work that he's done in Glooscap as well. Glooscap's my community that I come from, and he's led a number of drum sessions for our younger male youth, and it's made a huge difference and has been really well received, and we were trying to continue that, and then of course COVID hit, so we've been a bit challenged, but we'll be bringing him back into the community once we're able to again. So we're really thankful for all of the support that Garrett has given to my community of Glooscap. There's two questions I'm seeing right now. The first is about the fire that burned throughout the Millbrook powwow. Can you talk about that?
So I think they're probably, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think they're probably talking about the sacred fire. So some powwows and some gatherings are done differently. Michael R. did state that there's competition powwows. Some competition powwows actually do have sacred fires, but most that I've been to actually don't. And more or less traditional powwows do have a sacred fire that burn for the entire event. So what they have is a sunrise ceremony, and with that sunrise ceremony, they bring an elder in. Usually the head elder of the gathering will come in and conduct a ceremony when the sun rises on the day of the powwow, and light that fire and bring in good thoughts and good prayers to our gathering. And that fire will stay lit the entire duration of the gathering, day and night. Usually there's people that will come throughout the night and they will take care of the fire. They want to be around the fire. And that fire is just to bring those prayers, those good thoughts and those prayers into the gathering. Now there are certain dances that are associated too with the powwow where dancers are given tobacco, and Jen can get into a little bit more about that because it is her dance style. Well, I think Jen dances three or four different dance styles, so she can pretty well cover the basis of what we're going to talk about here. But when those dances are conducted, and there's certain types of songs that are sung, usually honor songs or even sometimes side steps, I should say. And again, Jen will talk about a little bit more about what a sidestep song is. And dancers bring prayers to that dance arena and to also families who need it. Again, when it comes to even singing, it's all a form of prayer too. When we're sitting around that drum and we're singing, some of us are singing our butts off simply because either we need it, someone in our family needs it, or someone within our community needs it. And when that tobacco offering is given to those dancers pray for it. Then they go and they offer it to the fire to bring those prayers up to the Creator. Most competition powwows don't have it because the simple reason it is a competition, right? There's some ceremony that happens along with the competition powwows for sure, but a lot of it has to deal with competing for money and so on, and that even goes with the same with the drums.
So we have two more questions. They're both related to the role of women, so I'll kind of put them together. One is asking, I see women using the smaller drums or the hand drums they're talking about. Can you also use the big drum with the group? And then the second question says, do you allow girls into your youth drum group?
Yeah, so the teachings that I was taught, especially with the big drum, was that the women stand behind the men, and they ensure that we are doing what we're meant to be doing, but they're also singing along with the men at the same time. I stated earlier that there is some family drums that have women that are a part of the drum circle, and that is their personal preference. There's nothing against it. And the thing is with the teachings, they're always evolving. Growing up, there was a there was a women's drum group here, and as a part of my community known as Flowers of the Dawn, and they were actually one of the very first powwow groups here in Millbrook, actually, in my community, and they traveled, they did their thing, and it was an all women's drum group. But I say that is something that is normal in my eyes, not really, no, but I can't really say other than the fact that the only thing that I know is that the women stand behind the men and they ensure what we're meant to be doing. When it comes to the teachings of the hand drum, in the Cree territory, women don't touch hand drums. Here in Mi'kmaq, some do. You know, out west, women are allowed touching drums. So it's a matter of the teachings of where the region that you actually come from. A good friend of mine, and some of you may have heard of her, her name is Fawn Wood. She's half Cree and half Coast Salish. So, in her beliefs on the Cree side, that she's not allowed to touch the drum. But on her Coast Salish side, she says she can get away with it because of her Coast Salish side. And she actually uses the hand drum, and she does the proper round dance beat when singing her songs, and it's actually, to me, it's pretty cool to watch, to actually see that. Again, we all have our own personal points of views here when it comes to these teachings. All of us were taught differently. We all learned. Some of us learned at a very much an early age, and some of us learned at a later age, such as myself. So to see these new concepts and to hear these stories, it's pretty neat and pretty cool to hear and also see firsthand.
Well, thank you very much, Garrett. That's all of the questions we have for now, but appreciate your time. The next speaker we have up is Jen Denny, and I'm very honored that we have her speaking. As Michael R. and Garrett has said, Jen is an award-winning dancer. She dances multiple styles. She's also a phenomenal fashion designer. So she's going to talk about the different styles of dance, talk a bit about regalia, but she's going to talk about something else outside of powwow, which is also how we dress and as Indigenous peoples as a representation of ourselves. And this is getting to something that happened on campus about asking Indigenous peoples to wear their traditional clothing so they can be identified as being Indigenous. And my example was, well, do you ask a Dutch person to wear wooden shoes so that you know that they're Dutch? You wouldn't do that. It's very tokenistic to make that type of request or statement or have that type of expectation of us. For me, for example, my mom wears ribbon skirts all of the time. I only wear it when it's special ceremony for me, but my mom's also a traditionalist. So Jen's going to get into that a little bit more too for individuals to understand, and that they're, again, how we dress is a reflection of our individuality, and there shouldn't be expectations of us to dress in a very primordial or tokenistic way. But she's also going to speak about dance and regalia. So on that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Jen now.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good. Okay, perfect. Alrighty. Before I start, I just want to say my name, Deloisi, Jennifer-Lynn Denny. I am from Millbrook First Nations. I'm the youngest of 7, and both of my parents are Mi'kmaw, and actually my mom is half Scottish and my dad is half German. So technically I'm a quarter German, a quarter Scottish, and half Mi'kmaw. Over the years, I've been really claiming that because throughout my life, especially as a younger child, there was always this stigma about, well, you're half, well, you're full, and what defines someone as being First Nations. And I think that that's a belief of the past, and I believe in moving forward. As a young adult, I'm 27 now, I'm completely okay in my own skin, and I do claim that non-Indigenous part of me as well, because it's who I am, you know, and so I want to go forward the same way throughout my life leading up until this point. I want to go forward claiming all of who I am. So that's a huge theme for me, actually, for 2021 going forward, is claiming myself and 100% of who I am. I think everybody in the past year, I think it's kind of naive for me to not acknowledge what had happened this past year, which was the pandemic. And I know that was extremely difficult for a lot of our viewers and a lot of you guys, you know, like we're doing this talk right now rather than in person. I've done a lot of live talks at universities, the airport, Stanfield's airport. I've done talks there and live performances. So this is the first time in history where we've been forced to go outside of our comfort zone and basically adapt to evolution and technology. Even today we had technical difficulties trying to log in because everybody needs to become in sync with the same type of technology. So I feel that it is the Indigenous way to think about technologies and to think about advancements. I find in Indigenous culture, I'm just going to jump right into it. You'll learn more about me as I talk along here. In Indigenous culture, especially Mi'kmaw cultures, we were always evolving, and I really don't like it when people say, one of the things actually, we'll talk about so the pandemic happened, a lot of people struggled, forced us into technology. This past fall, for a lot of Nova Scotians, we're talking from a Nova Scotian university, Acadia University, and I'm sure you have students that are from the South Shore because you are in Kentville, right? So that's the area that you're located in. And then not far beyond that, we had a historical event this fall that had occurred with the fishing disputes. And for people that are just watching, I grew up in powwow dancing, and then I had involved into regalia making. For those of you that don't know, regalia is the proper terminology for Indigenous wearable art, but it's more so your traditional clothing that each tribal affiliation would wear, and you can't even say tribal affiliation, you would say Indigenous people throughout the world, because when you think of regalia, it would reference your traditional attire that you wear that was traditionally worn by your group of people. So whether you're German or you're Scottish or you're from different parts of the world, even Dutch, you have your own traditional regalia, which is your traditional attire that you would have worn. So I went from regalia making to fashion designing. I went to school at the Blanche Macdonald Center, which is a private fashion institution in Vancouver, BC. So I had moved there in 2015, fall 2015, and took a 12-month program there, and wrapped that up in September of 2016. I moved home. I'm only 27 for those of you that are listening, but I feel like I've lived a lot because I began dancing. I had to write it down because it feels so long ago now. I started dancing at the age of 5 years old in a regalia, so that would have been in the year 1998. I know Sabrina, I do ramble, so I wanna, if I'm kind of going off topic here, ask me a question, but I'm gonna continue on. So I started dancing in an actual regalia at the age of 5. So that's 23 years ago. right? And so I've been doing this for a long time. I started contest dancing in the year 2007, and I actually, this is a unique thing that I do, and I know a lot of like contest dancers do it. I always used to keep my numbers, my competition numbers, because I grew up in Mi'kmaw territory where we were just doing traditional powwows, which didn't involve contesting and competing against each other at all. I mean, like, you're talking about the late 90s, like we just started getting powwows out here. As Michael mentioned, powwows were more of a Western concept, and we adapted that into our belief of Mawiomi, which is the Mi'kmaw term for gatherings, and basically made powwows our own, which is what a lot of tribes across Canada and the United States have done. They've turned powwows into, whether you're like Seminoles in Florida, or you're the Mohawks in Ganawage, or you're even Coast Salish way over in BC. All of these tribes across Canada and all of the U.S. tribes across the United States have taken this concept of powwow, which is singing and dancing and gathering together, and they've taken their own tribal affiliation and perspective on it and turned it into their own. So actually it's kind of like one powwow isn't specific to one tribe in North America. We are all doing it now in the new age. And I think when it first started, from what I had heard, when I was really young, this knowledge was passed on to me. So correct me, we probably have viewers that are from, you know, these tribes, especially the Lakota tribe. I have a lot of people on my personal Instagram that are from the Dakotas. And they probably logged on today. So anybody that's listening right now, if you want to correct me after, I'm all about the learning. So correct me, because I don't know everything, and I don't claim that I know everything. But when I was a young child, what I was told is that there was this man that was doing a Wild West show, and he was actually a non-Indigenous man. And this was in the Dakotas, in South Dakota area. And he had put on a show because he wanted to have a Wild West show. This was in the 80s, is what I heard, that in the 80s, he had gathered some Dakota people together, so Lakota, Dakota, and he gathered them together and said, wear your traditional regalias, and I want you to dance like an eagle. Said, I want you to look like an eagle. And they had already adorned, like many Indigenous tribes across North America had adorned themselves with eagle feathers. Like that was just something that was we had in common across North America as Indigenous peoples. And throughout a lot of Indigenous peoples' storytelling, the eagle is so sacred because it's the highest bird that flies in the sky. So it's the closest to the Creator. And that's why we honor that bird so much. That's why it's so sacred to us. And so many people, whether you're a Mi'kmaw or you're a Mohawk or you're a Coast Salish, you would wear that bird on your clothing. Like it wasn't even regalia back in the day, you know, pre-European contact, right? We weren't calling that regalia. That was your clothing. You wore those because that was what you wore. You know, you wore articles of clothing that came from the land. Your clothes, your actual top and your bottoms, if you're a female, it was most likely leather because that's all the materials you had. We didn't have cotton over here. We didn't have woven fibers, right? So we had to take from the land. We had furs, we had leather. And that's a really important thing to note because there's a huge controversial issue right now with the Inuit using sealskin, and Mi'kmaw historically used sealskin as well. And people say, oh, that's not good because, you know, you're killing baby seals and you're killing seals are an endangered species. And we have a colonial perspective from a race and a group of people, and there are a large group of people throughout the world that are saying that's animal cruelty. Well, this is how we survive off the land, and this is how we have survived off the land for thousands of years, long before European contact, and this is how we made our traditional clothing. And we've been colonized enough, so leave us alone and let us do our thing and continue to make our clothing, you know, the way we were supposed to be making it all along before we got colonized. So yeah, so basically growing up, I grew up, like, as you listen to me talk, you're like, that girl is like full of knowledge. I'm full of like dates and historical timelines and teachings about Regalia, teachings about not just North American Indigenous people, teachings about, you know, people around the world, because my dad was always interested in ancient history and my mom was always interested in history. They're very educated people, and they always talk to me about, you know, you're Mi'kmaw, but you're Scottish and you're German. And so you need to know about the world, and you need to know where these countries are that your ancestors come from, because just as much as you need to know your Mi'kmaw history, you need to know about that part of you too, because that's your makeup. And what my dad always told me is like, your DNA is in you. Like you will know things about your ancestors because it was passed down as like almost like an energy, like that energy from your ancestors, you know, over in Germany, or your ancestors over in Scotland, that's passed on to you because it's in your blood. And so then on my Mi'kmaw side, I have really awesome ties that tie back to the oldest treaties in North America, which are the 1752 treaty, which was signed by Jean-Baptiste Cope. And Jean-Baptiste Cope is actually my 9th great grandfather. So I have some really strong lineage on my Mi'kmaw side, and some, I don't know my lineage on my other side. So I'm still learning that. I'm going off on a tangent here. So powwow dancing for me was always my outlet from a child to starting to figure out my identity as a First Nations person, because that's what was available at the time. Because of the residential schools, Mi'kmaw people, my grandparents and my parents, they were in my parents' generation. They were in the 80s and the 90s. They were just starting to reintegrate into their Mi'kmaw culture, because when you think about it, the residential school, and also because of the Indian Act, at points it was illegal for us to wear our traditional regalias. It was illegal for us to practice our culture. And so when powwow started coming around in the East Coast in the 90s, that was an opportunity for Mi'kmaw people to start learning about what it was like to be Indigenous. And because it was even a non-familiar form of practicing culture, we still began to practice it. And then over the years, actually just recently, in the past 10 years, I want to say 15 years, we started reclaiming Mi'kmaw dances and singing. And even though some people still had known about the Gojwa, which is Mi'kmaw dancing and singing, they're only just now starting to incorporate Mawiomi, which historically was Gojwa dancing and singing, into powwow. I remember the first time I went to a powwow where I seen the tribal affiliation full on incorporating their dances and their singing into powwow was when I went to Ganawage powwow. And at the Ganawage powwow, the Mohawk people had put their smoke dance into their into their grand entry, and they sang their smoke dance songs and their Haudenosaunee songs as they were going in. And I was like, wow, like that's beautiful. They're sending in their Mohawk dancers first, and their smoke dance dancers, because I know they're in Six Nations. There's 6 different branches of them, so I don't know everything. I just know what I know. So they were going in, and then they sent in their powwow dancers, and a lot of their dancers that were smoke dancers later on put on their powwow style regalia and competed in powwow style too. So this was just in 2015 I seen this. And I've seen smoke dancing my whole life. One of the first contest powwows I went to, as I told you, I kept my numbers, was in 2006. So I was 13 years old. This was my number. So this was at the Eskasoni powwow in Connecticut. My parents took me, and funny story, there was an elder, his name was Clarence Gould. Here's my house that I grew up in, childhood house. There was another house, and then he was on the corner. And this elder, Clarence Gould brought powwow to my community of Millbrook First Nations. He was the first one to bring it here. I believe it was in the early 90s. So I was born in 1993. So if it was 1990, like that was really new, right? So for my community. And I went down to visit him. My dad would always bring me down, and they'd start sipping tea, and we would just watch videos. He had cassettes. And one of the cassettes was this Skimitsin powwow. This is like long before YouTube. And so he pops in the cassette, and it was a contest powwow, and it was this powwow in Connecticut. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I want to go to that powwow someday. And I told my dad, I'm sitting on the floor, like, imagine me, right? This was after I started powwow dancing in 1998. So it could have been 1999. I could have been like 6 years old, because I remember being really little sitting on his floor. And so I'm watching this video, and I'm like, oh, I was like, this is so cool, the dancing in this. It was the first time visually I seen men's fancy dancing, which is like with the double bustle. And I was like, that's intense. Like, I really like this dance, and I like the regalias that I'm seeing in the United States, because they're not wearing regalias that I'm seeing around here in Atlantic Canada, like in Mi'kmaq. What I'm seeing around here is a lot of fabric work and like minimal beadwork. So in a historical context, Mi'kmaq regalias weren't fully beaded regalias. We were Eastern woodland style regalia. If you look it up on Google and you do your research into what Mi'kmaq style regalia looks like, a lot of it pre-contact was just leather and painting. And then post-contact was a lot of trade wools. So the colors were actually the colors of the British Army. We used navy blue and red. So if you look at, and black actually, if you look at our regalias that you see, especially in the Nova Scotia Museum, they're navy blue, red, and black. And then the beads are just white. And like you have some other colors in there, but basically it was pretty minimalist, the beading style of the Mi'kmaq people. And there's so many other art. You could go on and on about the art styles of Mi'kmaq people. We have birch bark. We also did, my dad gave me this. It was a rare piece that came from Conn River, Newfoundland. He gave this pin to me. It was salmon leather, so that's salmon skin, and that's a quillwork flower on there. So he gave me and that was a little oak stick. He gave me this when I was 5 years old. He went to a meeting up there, so he brought that back to me. He said, Jennifer, like, people don't do this anymore, but this is what we would have done our artwork on, was more natural things. We wouldn't have been doing, you know, our artwork on, say, what we're doing them on now, which is like fabric, right? So these are my leggings that I made. I did it when I moved out to Vancouver. I got hired for a film, and it was called River of Silence. And I worked with actor Roseanne Supernault. She was on Blackstone, and she wore that regalia, those leggings right there, in a scene where it was a powwow scene. Yeah, I got a lot to share. Do you want to ask me some questions? I'll just go into question period, because I'm better with questions. It's like, how can I tell you about 23 years of like powwow dancing? It's so hard.
Well, I guess the first question was one that was raised earlier when Michael R. was speaking, and it was, as a young Mi'kmaq person trying to learn my culture, how would I go about learning dance and begin putting my regalia together?
Find your local First Nations community, even if it's not the community that you're assigned, not assigned, I shouldn't say that, that sounds really colonial, that you're registered with. You should go to a First Nations community and ask questions.
And to another question that was asked earlier as well, is how do you get selected as a head dancer?
You don't get selected. This was 2008 Indian Brook New Year's gather and junior head dancer honoring our families. I always used to get these little tags, so I keep everything. Someday I want to write a book. So I'm like, it'll be a picture book. I can't stand reading. I really can't stand reading. It'll be a picture. I'll just scan everything and it'll all be in the book. So this is my tag. And I just remember the first time I got asked to be a head dancer. It was actually for Indian Brook, and I was like, want to say I was like 9 years old, and that was the first summer I started dancing fancy shawl, and I wasn't even really that decked out. I remember I just had like a shawl, and you know, I mean, when I was 9, I don't know what year that would have been, 2000. So basically what had happened was someone called up I was dancing around the powwow trail already since I was 5 years old, so for the past 4 years since I was 9, right? And I got a call to my house and they said, hey, we're doing it was the powwow organizer. We're getting ready to start planning our powwow this summer. Can Jennifer dance for us? And so basically how that started happening, and that's how it would go. Like, you got your organizer who's organizing an event, they call someone and they ask you, but they will sometimes ask you right at the end of the powwow, because there's been other years, I don't know how many times I've been head dancer, a lot since I was a kid. And it's an honor, and I knew that from when I was younger, because the very first gig, my mom told me this. She said, Jennifer, not everybody gets called to be a head dancer. And she said, you better act right. You walk with respect, you treat people with respect. And she just like scolded me. And like in the Mi'kmaw culture, like I get told, like that's a part of our culture. You're supposed to get scolded. And I'm always like telling people, like when someone scolds you at a powwow, don't take offense to it, because most likely if the person's scolding you, they probably know something about something. So don't go disrespecting them and crying and saying, you know, like, so-and-so told me that my dress was too short. I had a respected friend of mine, actually, his name's Armando. I made a dress in the summer of 2015. You just get called for head dancer. They call you, but you build a reputation for yourself. It's not something I ever aspired to be. I wasn't like a kid and started dancing at 5 and I was like, next year I hope I'm gonna be picked as head dancer. Like, I wasn't like that. I think because I was raised with old school values, I'm just gonna be straight up. And I was really like, when you're around an elder, you shut up, like you're seen and not heard. Like, there's some really old school values in the Mi'kmaw culture, like women standing behind the men by a drum. If you're on your time, like there's so many things, and I don't talk about ceremonies on here, so I won't talk about that. But like, there's so many things you learn. And I think because when I was told something as a kid, I did it the first time, people are probably like, that kid has respect. I don't know. And then I started getting hired. I don't know.
But you're right, Jen. The aspect of respect is so critical, not only to powwow, but to being Mi'kmaw. And like you said, being scolded, like it was nothing if my grandmother hit me in the back of the head. Not hard, but like that's just, you respect your elders. If your aunts or uncles or older cousins walk in the room and there's no chair there, you sit on the floor, you give them that chair. These are all huge aspects of what it means to be Mi'kmaw. I know, like, it's challenging for people because they're hearing words like sidestep and honor song, and we're referencing different styles of dance. And with technology, we can't really show them this, but could you maybe describe a bit in the differences of regalia for different styles of dance? What people might notice that
style. Yeah, you got old style and contemporary. Old style is the original style of the dance, the purest form of what it first started out as, and some dances originated from different tribes. I know that so I'll just talk about the different styles for women. You got women's northern traditional, southern traditional, jingle, fancy shawl, you got hoop dancing, and then you got some dances that are specific to tribes. You got like the smoke dance, which women dance, and they're from the like Iroquois, Mohawk. I can't speak on them because I'm not from that tribe. And you have so many other dances from other tribes. People might have heard of the rain dance and things like that. So, and then for the Mi'kmaw, it's called the Gojua dance. So you got women that dance that. Then you got the men's dance styles. You got grass, you got traditional, you got men's fancy, you got chicken dance, you got hoop dance. Hoop dance is a unisex dance. You got men and women that dance that. Then specific to their tribes, they have their tribal affiliation dances, which most commonly you'll see smoke dance, and then out this way in the East Canada, you'll see the Gojua dance. Within each dance style, they have their own style of regalia. And within each of that style of regalia, so for example, for the men's traditional, you're gonna have northern traditional and southern traditional. Northern traditional, you'll see a lot more leather and fringe. You'll see a lot more fully beaded beadwork. This is part of my northern traditional regalia. Like my northern traditional regalia took me 2 years to make, and I just made it a few years ago. This is a fully beaded purse. This is part of my northern traditional regalia. And the cape alone, my cape, a lot of people, I get a lot of compliments on my cape. They say, how long did it take you to make that? And I'm like, I don't know. I zoned out halfway through. No, it was like 2,000 hours to make just the cape. And it's 3 feet width by 6 feet length of fully beaded beadwork. So that's a northern style, and I dance northern style traditional. And so northern style men's traditional has a lot of beadwork like that as well. And then the southern style will be a lot of cloth and minimal beadwork. So each regalia, you really got to do your research into it. And if you are Indigenous and you're inspired by dancing a pow style dance, you got to do your research. Don't just like, and ask and learn, ask questions. Like in this day and age, I'm just gonna say it. People look at something on Instagram and they get inspired and then they go and whip it up. Regalias and pow dancing, it's not like that. You don't get inspired and go and make it. This isn't fashion designing. Like you got fashion designing, then you got regalias. I don't go and look at an East Indian garment and say, oh, I'm inspired by that, let me go and make it. It's not like that. This ain't Coachella. Like we're not. You don't just wear headdresses because it's a fad or a trend. Like headdresses are very sacred to us. And that's something like where we talk about how regalias, Indigenous people's traditional garments have turned into a fashion trend. And that's where I started to really like pay attention to cultural appropriation, which is what Sabrina had first mentioned when we got into this discussion. Was just real quick what happened this week. I think it was in Ontario. There was a young 10-year-old girl went to school on professional day and she wore a ribbon skirt, and then the teachers had said to her, oh, that's inappropriate for you to wear that skirt. So then a bunch of Indigenous people, the men and women, came together to protest outside of the school, and they wore their ribbon skirts to show these colonial institutions that long before you came to our traditional lands, we had our own garments that we wore, and we have every right to wear them in whatever context, whatever situation, whatever day and time of day we want to wear it. We're going to wear our traditional garments because we're in the process of healing, especially when you think about reconciliation, everything that's going on. Like you have the Indian day school survivors are just getting their rights and their accommodations now after years of abuse that wasn't even talked about. Indian day school was first thing that was on a mandate for Canada, was addressing residential schools and addressing their healing. So now we're the offsprings of those people that had trauma, where you were embarrassed and you were shunned to wear your traditional garments in our own lands. So now, in the year 2021, I have every right to wear what I want to wear, especially if it's my traditional garments, down to the store shopping or wherever. And if you want to look at me funny, but I'm going to start owning that as I go forward. And I think this is a huge movement. I always talk to my girlfriends. I have a friend who's coming out with podcasts. I'll give a shout out to Brooke Willis. She was a huge part of the movement this year with the addressing the fishing rights. And I had a clothing line that came out. It was called Treaty 1752 with my clothing company here, Ilnu Clothing Co. And we released a collection that was based on storytelling. And the storytelling went as far back as my 9th grade grandfather, Jean Baptiste Cope, and the 1752 treaty. And when I went to fashion design school, one of my first things was, I'm going to use fashion and I'm going to utilize what I can learn in a modern context and take it back and indigenize it. I'm going to take all my traditional knowledge of regalia making and take the world of garment construction in the fashion design world and smash it together in one, and teach the world about who we are as Indigenous people and tell our story creatively through fashion. And that's what I did this fall. I did a whole line on the 1752 treaty in a time where we were having a lot of political unrest in this province of Nova Scotia, and a lot of racism actually based on fishing disputes. And our 1752 treaty right gives the Mi'kmaw people the right to hunting and fishing and to sell your catch. So that's why everything that I do has so much more meaning behind it, because I'm trying to speak to the world without using my voice. Like, how can I use my art and what I know how to make with my hands and speak to the world?
Thank you for that, Jen. And I think, again, building on fashion and how we dress, People have to understand it is an expression of who we are today. Michael R. and Garrett both had on medallions. Is that an expectation that individuals always have to wear that? No, that's what they chose to wear. I have earrings on today that are red dresses. Why did I choose those? Because missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is something very close to my heart. I'm not wearing it as a specific expression to prove that I'm Indigenous. I know that I'm Indigenous inside. I don't have to show anything on the outside. This just has significance to me, and that's why I'm choosing to wear it. And I think that's a really important message that people have to understand, is it's the same as any other individual of any other ethnicity. They choose to wear what they want to be an expression of their individuality. We have a question that says, could you please discuss the importance of the color red?
To me, the color red for Indigenous people, let's just talk about where the color came from. It was berries. So all of our colors that we incorporated into our designs came from natural colors. So if you created a green tone, it came from the grass. A lot of Mi'kmaw people, when they were making dyes, they would use their spit, and they would spit into a wooden bowl. They would mix the saliva and an element. So like grass, you made green. If you grabbed a bird egg, it would make yellow. If you grabbed and the saliva used as a acidic type of basically chemical to be able to have a chemical reaction onto the fabric that would make it hold. So when you talk about red, in the Beathuk tribe that went extinct, they were wiped out completely by the British Army. They were in New Brunswick area. They used red ochre. So if you've heard about red ochre, it's this material from the ground, and they used to paint their whole bodies in red, head to toe, because for them it was a power color and it was a protection color. So certain colors translate into certain messages or certain messages to themselves, and maybe through their traditional teachings. I can only speak on behalf of the Mi'kmaw people. For the Mi'kmaw people, just as when you think about colors around the world, what's red? Red is like a stop. Red for me is a protection color, and that's what I've been taught about through teachings and traditions. So speaking for the Mi'kmaw people, it's a protection color.
And actually building on that, a question following it says, can you choose your own colors for regalia, and do colors have different meanings?
Yeah, you should choose your own colors. The reason why you should choose your own colors is because your regalia should be telling a story about who you are. So when I chose these colors for this regalia, I looked into an 1800s picture. It was a picture of Mi'kmaw quill work. And I looked at the artifacts that are now in the Smithsonian Museum of our artifacts. We don't even have our own artifacts in our own traditional lands because they were taken from us. Like, we even have our artifacts in the Vatican. The Pope owns our artifacts because when they came to our lands, they took everything from us. So we don't even have that stuff to visually see. It makes me so emotional and like almost like angry, because it's like, people say to the Mi'kmaw people a lot, how come you guys started doing power dancing and you guys didn't do your own stuff? It's like, because we were first contact. When you think of the migration path of the Europeans, when they came to North America, they came to the East Coast first. So we were hit almost 200 years earlier. Our treaties are the 1700s. The farther west you get, they're in the 1900s. Their treaties. So because we were hit by contact 200 years earlier, the Mi'kmaw people for a long time, we didn't even know who we were. We didn't even know who we were, you know, and it's just like, so then you have the residential school era. Canada's expanding and they're starting to create, like I went to this thing, I kept this ticket because it was Democracy 250 and it was put on by CTV and all these wonderful places, you know, it was sponsored by the Chronicle Herald and Z103.5. And this was my artist pass because I was a performer for D250. And I said, Democracy 250 for who? Democracy 250 for Canada, not for us, because we had our own democracy, we had our own law, our own education, everything thousands of years before 250 years. So I kept this because it was just like, you're hiring me as your token Indian to dance at your event to claim that you've been here for 250 years. And I always owned it, going to these events because I was like, I deserve to be here more than whoever, to show my culture, because my culture was here long before whoever's going to be up next on the list. So it's just like, yeah.
We have another question that says, do you have to make your own regalia, or can someone make it for you?
You can make your own regalia, and I do think that if you're Indigenous, you should learn how to make your own regalia, especially going forward into history, because the farther into history as we get, we're going to lose that more touch with our Indigenous identity. So if you don't learn the root of where the item comes from, including the art of making it, the art of making your own regalia is just as much a part of the culture of powwow dancing, and even just traditional dancing, whatever tribe you're from, as the dance itself. I encourage people to go and learn how to make their own regalia.
We have 2 more questions for you, and then there's one question that I think any of the participants or speakers can speak to. But this one, it says, is it appropriate for non-Indigenous children to learn dances? Can they participate in dance at powwows?
There's a song called the Intertribal Dance. It's a song and a dance where the arena director will say, okay, we're going to have an intertribal song. And one of the invited drum groups who is Indigenous will sing, and they'll sing a song specifically for a time where the other races that are there can come in and learn about our culture and actually physically take part in dancing. But the rest of the time, you shouldn't be dancing someone else's dance. And the reason why I say, and you shouldn't be wearing their traditional attire, because it's disrespectful. I never once have woken up in my life and thought, wow, I'm really inspired by Japanese culture. I think I'll wear a kimono today and I'll go and learn how to do their dance. Never once have I ever woken up and thought, even that, I remember this movie, Memoirs of a Geisha, came out, and I was like, that is so beautiful. But I never watched that movie and thought, that's so beautiful. Let me go buy a kimono, even if it's a knockoff, and let me go and learn how to do a dance like a geisha. Never once has that thought crossed my mind, because Indigenous people are such the bottom and least exposed people in North America. It almost seems like we're a facade, like we're fake. We're so far from reality that people don't even think twice about putting on our traditional regalia and trying to dance like us. It's not cool. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm glad you said that, Jen. And I think anyone who's been to a powwow where you can listen to the MC, Michael R. does this all the time. When it is intertribal, they'll say other people can go in. So also listen for cues from the MC to know if it's appropriate if you're a non-Indigenous person visiting a powwow. This is a really great question, actually, that was asked. Is sometimes cultural appropriation is very clear, like the headdress, but sometimes it's hard to understand what would be acceptable for non-Indigenous peoples to wear, like the Ilnu clothing line or certain jewelry or moccasins. Can you provide some guidance?
Okay, if you're an Indigenous company creating Indigenous content, support those companies. I'll list some companies right now that support that. Beyond Buckskin is like an Indigenous market, and they sell all authentic Indigenous wearable art. If you're buying it from those sellers, support them. If you're going to Ardene's or like H&M or Zara and you see Native inspired necklaces, shirts with tribal patterns and stuff like that, that's appropriation. But if you're supporting the money that you're spending is going directly to the Indigenous artists that had made that, support away and wear away. And when people ask you about it, say this was made from, and know about it too. When you buy the product, learn about the Indigenous tribal affiliation of the artist, so that when someone asks, wow, that's a beautiful necklace, you can say, yes, this was made by the Mi'kmaw First Nations people, and the artist's name was this, so that you can fully practice appreciation of our culture and not appropriating it. And so with my clothing company, This was modern Indigenous fashion. So I had created a streetwear clothing company, and it was called Ilnu Clothing Co. And I released it last year, November 10th. And then we had gone out of business actually this November 27th. It's all good. We're moving on. So then that clothing company was an online clothing company. And we had our tagline was basically, our message was, we are a Mi'kmaw-owned clothing company, creating clothing for everybody, which is what we did. And so if you have a clothing company that's Indigenous made and you're supporting, another one, Manitoba Mucklucks, they're Indigenous. If you have a brand that you know is Indigenous, and there's a lot of fakes out there, so be careful of the fakes. There was a woman that just came out, she was applying for Indigenous film funding, and she took away financial opportunity from so many Indigenous film creators that could have been creating content with, like, I heard it was like millions of dollars. So that money, you have to be careful. And she even had Indigenous people and actors in her movies, and they thought she was Indigenous. And then finally, just this past year, she said, I have to get this off my chest, I'm really not Indigenous. But yet she was using the money. So you got to be careful in this day and age. Like, you make an Instagram page and they're like, oh, whatever. You don't know. You don't know who's on the other side of the screen. So do your research. Yeah, that's what I got to say for that.
I promise these are the last two questions because we have more pop up. But one question is, what were beads traditionally made from?
Okay, so beads came from trade, and originally they were for the Mi'kmaw people. I can't speak on other tribes, so it's wampum. So wampum's a quahog. Wampum shell for us was used as a currency as well. Women that had wampum shell necklaces in the Mi'kmaw tribe, you knew that that woman was probably married to a chief or like a really good hunter, because he was able to trade enough to get her that many beads on her neck. If you had a necklace like this is turquoise and coral and some abalone shell. If this whole thing, you don't even see wampum anymore because you can only get one wampum bead per quahog. Where are quahogs found? Like Tatamagouche, like all along our coastline here in Nova Scotia, these quahog shells are found. And you can only get one bead per quahog shell, and there it was called wampum.
So this question you can answer, or Michael R. or Garrett. It's two parts. I'm combining two questions together. One is, do drummers wear regalia? And the other question is, what should non-Indigenous people wear to a powwow if we get the chance to attend one? What's considered appropriate?
Okay, one, yes, you can be a dancer and a singer. What I was told before is don't refer to them as drummers. They are singers, and they sing at a drum, and they are called singers because anybody can drum, not everyone can sing. That's what I was taught when I was a kid. And then also, Michael sings on a drum. He has his own drum group, and he also is a powwow dancer. And then part two to that question, he can go back and do part one. And then part two, wear what you feel most comfortable in. And if you're Scottish, wear your regalia, wear your Scottish regalia, because we're going there to wear our regalia. I would much rather you wear your traditional regalia from your race and see you out there dancing with us and sharing each other's culture, so I can learn about you and you can learn about me, than seeing you out there wearing like some shirt from Zara that has like a tribal pattern on it.
And Michael R.?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you guys. Oh yeah, you hear me now. Yeah. I guess when it comes to clothing, when you're around a drum, there's a lot of different things, right? When I was growing up, the singers they always had to dress nice. That was one of the things that you did. You wear your best clothes, and sometimes people say that your regalia is your best clothing. So people can wear their regalia at the drum. Most, like what Jen mentioned. Some singers are, they're out there dancing as well. So, doing two roles. So it's not and you don't have to necessarily dance. You can go out there and wear your regalia while you're sitting at the drum. It makes no difference really. That's what when you're at a powwow, some of the older, some of the old school guys are really, some of the old school arena directors, a lot of people that I learned from and stuff, they're quite strict about what's what people wear, right? They'll say dress modestly. That's and I'm gonna leave it at that.
For females, don't come wearing booty shorts and your boobs hanging out. That's
Yeah,
disrespectful to our culture. You don't do that. Don't
but
do that.
you know, and it goes with men too. The men don't come to the power with your shirt off. You come on the different story when you're dancing, right? If like for the men, if the men are out there dancing like in Connecticut area, you got dancers that are called Eastern War men. They're dancing without their shirts on and stuff like that. If you're a spectator, you come to the power without a shirt on. Chances are somebody, the arena director or somebody's going to say something to you, tell you, you're supposed to be dressed, uh, have a shirt on, dressed modestly in a sense, right?
Thank you very much, Michael R. and Jen, for answering that question. That is all of the questions that have come in, which is quite amazing. We're at 2:59, 1 minute before our scheduled end time. So impressive for us.
I just want to say, can I say something real
Sure.
quick? Okay. Oh, I'm on. Can they hear me? Okay. So basically, like, I take these ways really seriously, and Michael R. was taught this too when you're younger. And I think, I don't know, maybe because I'm so straightforward, like that's what has gotten me so far in this, like, in pow dancing, and I guess traditional teachings is like, I don't mess around with it. And I don't really glamorize it, and I don't sugarcoat anything. Like, I'll tell you what my elders told me, and I'll tell you it the way they told me. And so, like, what I'm teaching I was taught a long time ago was like, when you're taught something, don't change it or alter it, because the farther you alter it over the years, the less you're gonna know in 100 years from now. So the way your elders taught it to you, that's how you have to teach it. But one thing I do want to say is, like, for anybody watching today, if you were to reach out to me and ask me questions, I just recently put my Instagram to private because I like to personally get to know one-on-one each person that I come into my paths cross with. So if you do have questions, I will answer them to my best ability. I answer every single question that someone asks me online. So if you have more questions, go ahead, ask away. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Jen. Thank you again, Michael R. Thank you, Garrett. Your time was very much appreciated, and all of your efforts and patience this morning for everything while we were having technical glitches. And I actually have to give a big thank you to Karen. She's not on right now, but from IT, who made it possible for today to go off without a hitch whatsoever. And I also have to thank Natalie and Sherry and Mary, who are behind the scenes, who made this session go seamlessly as well. They were moderating and producing this whole event so that all of you could attend and enjoy it, because if it would have been me, we wouldn't have been able to kick it off very well. I'm not very tech savvy with Microsoft Team Live. But thank you everyone for tuning in to this session. Again, so appreciative to our guest speakers here today. We have 3 more sessions left. There will be 2 next Tuesday, one in the afternoon with Garrett Gloade on landscape and place names. And then in the evening, we're going to have Lorraine Whitman and Sarah McDonald talk about the history of Glooscap and Annapolis Valley First Nations, because those are the 2 communities that surround Acadia University. So a lot of people were interested in learning the history about the 2 First Nations that Acadia is most closely associated with. And with Garrett Gloade, please tune in to listen to him, because Acadia University is situated in a really remarkable place in terms of Mi'kmaq, with our legends and stories, especially with Glooscap, with Bloomington. You're not aware of where you're located and the stories that are there, and Gerald will discuss all of that, and through beautiful imagery as well. And then January 24th, we have someone who's a mentor to me, Wanicorn Miller. She's Mohawk, and she is an Olympian and survived being shot at Oka as a teenager. And she's going to talk about culture and racism in sport and athletics. So hopefully everyone can tune into those. They're going to be recorded as well. So later on, we will be posting everything on the Indigenous Affairs website. So if people can't tune in, you can see the recorded versions. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and hope to see everyone next week.
Thank you for having us.